All right, we are back. Look at these guys here. Looks like Sasquatch's cousin, if he was a rock star with a beard down to his dick. I think he's wearing sunglasses. Got his grill showing. These guys are badass. Oh, and they flicker strike too. Hell yeah. Oh yeah, check this out. 7 days ago, I put in an order for 12 divine for 100,000 astrogalies. I think I'm gonna stream this, but I don't know yet. Well, I'll definitely stream it, but I don't know if I'm gonna complete it. I might get 20,000 rolls in and give up. But hopefully, we print some Mage Bloods and Headhunters and do the best unique farm in the game right now, which is fucking re-rolling Astrogali. Yeah. Supposedly, you're supposed to get a Mage Blood or a Headhunter every 10,000. We'll see. I'll probably stream this tomorrow. All right, I knew that at some point this league I was going to give melee minions a try due to the accuracy change. It is one of my biggest pet peeves with melee minions is having to slot in all that extra accuracy to actually get them to hit at 100% rate, but we no longer have to do that. I'm sort of cheesing Exarch here, letting the damage reduction go, but then I do end up being able to kill him before he phases. I was not able to one phase Eater. I didn't really set this guy up for bossing. I'm just sort of showing damage. Uh, I think if I were to set this up for bossing, I would probably add in a Demon Harpy with Spell Echo. I think that would add somewhere around 20 million more DPS, I believe. Um, but even without setting this up for bossing, the damage looks pretty damn solid, as you can see. The build is sitting around 78 million damage with Val Haste up, around 70 million without. If we add in the brittle that we get from the graphs, it's around 78 million or 87 million with Val Haste. I was not able to get, I'm only seeing 1.5% on the brittle applied. I'm not sure if you can go higher. I know it can go up to 6%, but from the graphs, oops, from the graphs that we get, not that one, the Great Avalanche, that when you desecrate, brings out these little guys that apply brittle. I haven't seen them go higher than 1.5%, so I think that's a reasonable amount of crit chance to apply, but even if we delete that and turn off the Val Haste, we're still sitting around 70 million, so the build single target is very strong. The other thing that concerns me with melee minions is their clear. However, it's not much worse than Wretched Defilers, which is a pretty high benchmark. I mean, Wretched Defilers is probably one of the top clear speed builds in the game, especially if you factor in being able to loot while everything dies. I mean, one of the best parts about it is you can just pick up loot as everything around you is dying, and you don't have to juggle, casting a skill at the same time, which just makes mapping very, very quick. As I'm sure most of you know, I think a lot of the people that follow me play Wretched Defilers. So you know how quick it can clear. But these guys clear pretty quick as well. I mean, I could probably go a little quicker than this. For the most part, everything just kind of dies behind me. The Forged Vendgos trail behind me a little bit. But yeah, they end up just kind of killing everything behind me. Looks like we're doing a strand here and about 45 seconds to get through it with Bloodline Scarab, some monstrous lineage. There's no Delirium or Shrines or anything, but yeah, we'll go back through the map here and you can see, other than that pack I missed, pretty much everything's dead, right? In about 45 seconds. So, definitely not lacking on the clear speed. There are certainly builds that are faster, but we'll show a quick little strongbox demonstration, I guess. Honestly, it's about as quick as Wretched Defilers. Most of the stuff is just dying behind me. The reason I run them like this is, so the boxes have time to open. They're a bit slow, so I find chaining them to be better. And I come back through and I start doing the reopens. You can see pretty much as soon as I pop them, everything's dead for the most part. Couple stragglers there. We pop that one, insta kill everything. Yeah, not too bad. I mean, I'm pretty impressed for a melee minion how well they clear. The other thing that I was a little bit concerned about is by equipping the Squire and dropping the Bone Offering for the Spirit Offering that we were going to be a little weaker on the tank side. This wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. As you can see me sitting here eating snacks and eating volatile cores, you're pretty much able to still completely AFK everything. The build is still very strong. Here I am AFK eating snacks and doing Harbingers. Doesn't really seem to have an issue with tank. Just kind of hang out in the middle of everything and let them do their work. And lastly, here we are in a Titanic Scarab of Legend, Invigoration, Blight Heart, all that good stuff. It's either 6 or 8 mod, I forget. 16.5, sitting here, AFK eating snacks and tanking everything. So the build's tank is pretty solid. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. There's only really one situation in where it's a bit weaker than my original setup, and that is when you have remove 5% of life on hit, life or energy shield, and then you also have those lightning blue guys in tier 17s that hit you very quickly, and those you have to play a little bit careful around. They don't just like one shot you or anything, but you definitely have to be, you have to notice that they're there if that T17 mod map is on, and you can't just like run face first into them or else they might mess you up. I wouldn't recommend using this build for Titanic Blight. It's doing well in this version because there's only one lane, but if the lanes are to split, it gets a little tough to manage everything unless you put a lot of frozen and stun altars up, which, you know, kind of defeats the purpose of Titanic Blight. You really want to be running mostly empowering towers. So, but it is still kind of cool to see the build performing very well, except on this Soul Eater guy here. He's a little tanky, but yeah, you're able to just face tank everything else and do pretty significant damage to it. So, build's definitely performing a lot better than I thought it was going to. So yeah, I would say the build has a few benefits over Wretched Defilers, a few benefits and a few negatives. The biggest benefit, obviously, is it's got a lot of damage. 70 million for a minion build is pretty strong, and you can boost those numbers up a little bit through certain situations. The other thing I really like about it is that my eyes don't bleed. When I was first making the Wretched Defilers in 3.25, I played them for about 2 weeks, and then I had to set them down for a while. It was just so unbearable looking at all those projectiles. Now, after playing it for league after league, I'm kind of used to it. They don't bother me anymore. But it is still really nice to be able to play mini build and not have all of that screen clutter. Aside from that, these guys are just kind of cool. You are able to run reflected maps due to the awakened elemental damage with attacks. Right, if you're unaware, the tag on awakened elemental damage with attacks is that elemental damage from supported skills cannot be reflected, and your minions do respect this. So if you want to do risk farms, you can do every mod now, I believe. The only one that would be a little bit annoying, or the only two, would be minion reduced attack and cast speed, but that only rolls up to like 75% now with the reduction to the increased effect on maps. And then the other one that's a bit annoying is monsters have a chance to block attacks, but that's still very clearable. It's just a little slower with the 75% chance to block attacks from the enemies. In my opinion, on the Wretched Defilers, Fizz reduction and crit reduction are pretty mandatory. I mean, that's definitely the gem that I want to end up on. I do think you want to be crit immune on a build if you can. You die a lot if you're not, but it's very hard to get +2 to duration gems as well as extra damage from critical strikes, reduced extra damage. It's very hard to get and very expensive. But since we no longer need the duration and not a lot of people are looking for something that isn't duration on the Dorianis, it opens up a lot of options for corrupted implicits. And since a lot of creators have adopted this Wretched Defilers, there's a lot of people double corrupting these right now. So you can get some pretty cool ones. And then since we can get the crit reduction on the chest, we can look for some other cooler Watcher's Eye, like movement speed on Grace and Regenerate. There's probably some better ones than this, but this one looked pretty nice, and it was like 5 Divine or something like that. So pretty good there. Since we aren't running Bone Offering, we no longer need Offerings Affect Us, so that opens up 2 points there. I decided to go into the increased global defenses because that obviously makes the most sense. If I'm going to lose the block, then I at least want a little bit more of an HP pool. And then I've been experimenting with coming out of this as well for this. This is a really cool node. It pretty much solves your mana issues entirely. If you don't take this, then you got to go into these 3 points here and then regenerate 5 mana per second, or else you're going to be kind of struggling with mana. And there's some other options that you can take too, but I find that to be the most effective. So this pretty much cures your mana issues, and then on top of that, you also get we have energy shield regeneration per second 632, and we start popping these guys here, and you can see your regen goes up, to about 1,000. So it's almost like 400 there. I think I've seen it go up to 1,200. But yeah, quite a bit of energy shield regeneration per second from that Atlas Ascendancy there. But yeah, this is 5 million damage. It's a lot of attack speed for your shield charge, and it's a lot of elemental resist for both your minions if you're not running a bone ring, but as well as you if you're struggling to get all the resists you need on the build. It doesn't feel nearly as socket starved as the other build due to not running generosity, I guess, and then I don't really know why. I feel like I can get a faster tax in. I feel like I have a lot of options on how to gem this. This is what I've settled on. I've been playing the build for a few days and experimenting with a lot of things, but I think this is where I'm at so far with the build. I don't think I'm going to make any more changes. I'm pretty happy with where it's at, but there's quite a bit of freedom to explore and do whatever you like. Like if you wanted to add that demon heartbeat with a spell echo, you could definitely do that, or whatever your heart desires. There's options. And lastly, the projectile bubbles that surround so many enemies in tier 17s that are very annoying for Wretched Defilers. It almost seems like in order to kill them, you need the returning projectile to hit them on Wretched Defilers. Because a lot of times they're just sitting there not taking damage, and you got to try to get your Wretched Defilers in there, and so you can invoke them on top, and your Defilers have a long shot mechanic, so they try to run away out of the Proj bubble, and fucking Proj bubbles are just crazy annoying. But with this build, no issue at all. They're in the bubble attacking. You don't even notice Proj bubbles. Very nice. And then for the negatives, it is very expensive. Obviously, you have the Mage Blood here. I'm running a mirror weapon, and then I did get the Giga Reflected Ring that I sort of regret putting Dexterity on. But a lot of those clips were shown without this ring. Most of the last setup I had was just a stat stick on one ring, and then a 29% increased attack and cast speed with some negative lightning res. It was like one divine, and then the stat stick was like 50 chaos, and that was what like half of those videos were shot on. So you can still get a ton of damage without getting this ring, but your odds to hit the reflect on this ring is 1 in 10, and if you use Hinocor's Lock, you're looking at like 900 divines if you have average luck. If you don't use Hinocor's Lock, which I would recommend at this stage of the league, it's not as bad to craft, maybe 300 to 400 divine, but very expensive. The mirror weapon is obviously a mirror plus 60 to 80 divines. I did some exploration with this. Actually, I did quite a bit. This is the weapon that I found to be best. I thought that getting Awakened Multi-Strike on the gems and not on the weapon is going to be better, but after all the PoBing I did, this was the weapon that ended up winning for the most damage. There are other versions of this, where you get less modifiers, like 1 or 2 less modifiers, and they're like around 100 to 200 divine. You'd obviously lose a good bit of damage. A support gem's worth the damage. But if you wanted to play the build and you didn't have a couple of mirrors to throw at it, then, the weapon is where you'd sacrifice, and then the ring is where you'd sacrifice. And then past that, and the Mage Blood obviously is expensive, but past that, most of the stuff is not that bad. The boots I've showed to craft many times. It's in the details of my last video about Wretched Defilers. This cost me like 30 or 40 divine to craft. The gloves, 5 divine or so. I just picked up off trade. Maybe 10, I can't remember. The amulet is pretty expensive these days. Squire's a couple of divine. Helmet's dirt cheap. These are very tough to get. I think at this stage, with the cost of Life Force, normally I roll speed on some fractured jewels, and then just exalt slam, annul, exalt, annul when you hit 3 modifiers, and pray you get lucky. But the yellow juice is way too expensive right now, so I think I would roll attack and try to hit minions have increased attack / cast speed as well as something else, and then exalt slam, annul, exalt, and hope you get lucky. but there are none of these on trade. So I bought like the only two that there were. The rest are like 50 divine or something absurd. Physical damage is better, but if you can't get physical damage, lightning will do. I think for like a perfect rolled one on both sides, I think lightning is about a million less per gem. So try to go for physical if you can, but if you can't, then lightning it is. I probably should have been rolling attack the whole time. I don't think speed is ever the right way to roll these, but in previous leagues I just had infinite currency to throw at whatever I felt like. This league I had to pay a little bit more attention because I'm a little bit more broke than usual. I've done quite a bit of exploration with the best gems. I think these are the best. Although feel free to explore. I spent probably an hour looking at them, but that's it. I haven't gone super in depth. I do believe these are the best, but there could be better options. Physical to lightning, awaken minion damage, obviously erase Spectre, and then over here we have awaken melee splash, which if I wanted to do like Ubers or something, I would swap in melee physical damage. You don't really have to do this, but it does give you quite a bit more damage. Over here we have power charge on critical, awaken elemental damage with attacks, and I do carry a feeding frenzy if I'm gonna do like tier 16 mapping or something. It improves the clear slightly, not by a whole ton. I've heard people say that you can put this on other specters and your minions will get the aggressive tag. I'm 99% sure that that's not how it works. They will get the 10% increased damage buff, but only the minions that this is linked to will actually get the aggressive tag. If you're not really sure how aggressive works, basically it increases their aggro range to a certain radius. I think it's like 8 meters, 10 meters. I can't remember off the top of my head. If you have like something like Wretched Defiler's aggro range is larger than what aggressive will give you. But primarily why this is good is because your minions go from aggro to defense to aggro to defense. And so they're constantly like trying to attack, and then the AI switches them back to a defense, so they come to you, and then they get switched back into aggressive, and they just have like these constant short durations where they're not attacking, which is why I like the aggressive tag so much, especially since the build is based on leech of them attacking. So I think aggressive is mandatory. But with these guys, I don't see an issue with it nearly as much. They seem to pretty much always just be going. So you don't really need that. But it does improve the clear slightly if you're doing lower tier content. But for the most part, I just leave this in and I carry this in the inventory if I feel like doing more damage. But I'm just kind of talking a lot about this. You don't even need any of this. You can just run melee splash. You're doing plenty of damage. But those are the gems. The rest will be in the POB. I'm not going to go over each and every one. This is sort of just a showcase for the build, and I'll give the POB, and you can kind of play around with it. I'll give you the blueprint, and you can see if it looks like it's something you want to play, and maybe if you don't have as much currency, you can slot in some other weapons and see how the damage looks. But for the most part, it's basically the exact same as the Wretched Defilers. We're just swap out weapon and shield and support gems, and then it's basically the exact same build. The way you get the Forged Vendgos, since nobody is playing these, is just spec in Verisium, spec in ore deposits in your maps are likely to be rarer, and then grab some ore nodes, then roll settlers and run some Calgarian Scarabs. I ended up having to run, I think, 4 or 5 strands, and then you just hold down the Verisium ore and eventually they'll spawn. You can't miss them. They're pretty damn tall. They stand out pretty well. But yeah, you're just trying to channel some Verisium nodes, and that's how you'll find these guys. It doesn't take very long at all. I do think when I found them, they were named Forged Vendgo of the Hydra, which worried me. I thought they were going to be cold or fire or something. But when I spawned them, uh, they are no longer Forged Vendgo of the Hydra. They're just Forged Vendigo. So if this is your first time seeing me here on Wretched Defiler's build and POBs, I have quite a few details about how to craft some of the things. The boots are right here. They're a pretty easy craft. And the rings here I would change. Let's take a look. So the way I usually craft these is I just start picking up. Oh, well, I don't know what I'm doing here. Well, this is the footage I have, so we'll use our imagination a little bit. But I start picking up bone rings. I put bone rings on my filter, and then as I'm mapping around, I just fill up a whole tab of bone rings. Then, once you have a bunch of them, ready to go, you go to poe.re, you go to items, we'll go to bone rings. Excuse me. So I filled up an entire tab and I could not hit a 4 mod ring. And so I gave up last minute with a few rings left, and I changed course in how I would do this. So I would select minion increase attack and cast speed. I would select all of the resistances for tier 1 and basically whatever else you want. I went with dexterity. That might have been a mistake. I think it was a mistake. I'm way overcapped on dexterity now, and I have none on my items other than the mage blood. I think I'd probably do intelligence, but I don't know. I could also run into dexterity issues later on if I didn't do this, so it's hard to say. Maybe double resist is better. Maybe intelligence is better. You'll have to POB like what works for you, but you pick another mod. We'll just say dexterity since that's what I ended up doing, and then you're just going to put in that regex, and then the easiest way to do it is just to roll alterations around on all these rings. You're going to have to make quite a few of them, so I like to do my alteration rolling like this. I think because I'm not going to sit there rolling one item at a time. I think it's way better to get 10 items. If you want one, get 10, and then spam roll over all of them, and it makes your alteration spamming a lot faster. So from here, what we're going to do, we'll have a bunch of bone rings. Normally I have like a shit ton in my inventory. They're all going to have tier 1 attack speed, tier 1 dexterity, tier 1 of a resist. It doesn't matter what resist because you're going to use the Hoarder crafting station to roll it into lightning later. You just need it to be tier 1, and then you go to your recombinator, and then you're just going to start slamming them together. It's important that you only have one mod on them. So like if you hit a resist and something else, make sure you annul it off, so that it's just the resist. So that way when you recom them together, you're not getting a sloppy ring with a bunch of extra modifiers. But if you slam these together enough times, it's very easy to make a 3 mod ring. Very hard to make a 4 mod ring. So I finish the suffixes like this, and then from here, once I have like, let's say a tier 1 dexterity, tier 1, we'll say cold resist, and then minion or attack and cast speed, then I'll go to the Hoarder crafting station. I'll roll it into lightning, and then we have our 3 mod suffix, and then from there I would just metacraft through beast forging, or if you're rich, lock your suffixes, and then you just reforge defense for a tier 1 energy shield. And all of that together, if you have a shit ton of bone rings, isn't that expensive. Maybe like 10 to 20 divines, I would say, give or take, with the amount of defense rerolling you need to do. And then from there, you reflect for another 10 divine. So each attempt is like 30 divine. We'll say maybe, anywhere from 20 to 40 divine, and then you got to do about 10 attempts on average. So it is a bit of an annoying craft, but it is an insane ring. Obviously, don't forget to put your speed modifier on before you reflect. I've done that before, and it stings. Or you could do energy shield, whatever you want. You definitely don't need the lightning resist. I have negative 307, so you're not going to need to do a lightning modifier catalyst. So I would choose speed or defense or something like that. Or, if you're insanely rich and you don't like the process that much, then you could always lock it. Yep. And then lastly, if you want to make the boots, that is also here. You just click on the boots link and it'll take you to a stream that I did, where it's a little slow to explain because I was live streaming and it wasn't meant to be a tutorial, but I go through the entire process of making these. They're not very challenging to make. They maybe take you 20 or 30 minutes, and you can make some very strong boots for much cheaper than you will find them on trade, and or you can profit craft them and start driving margins down so people like me can buy them without having to craft them myself. That would be awesome. Please and thank you. But yeah, I think that's it. POB will be in the details. Not much has changed. Build's pretty much the same, aside from weapon and shield. If you try it, hope you enjoy it. Let me know how it goes.